Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. I know the subject of this hearing is about tax subsidies and the effect on the deficit, but I would also like to get your opinion about this issue, obviously, on the price of oil today, because many Americans are definitely feeling the impact at the pump. And Mr. Odom's testimony talked about how oil is a global commodity and that oil companies are price takers, not price makers. I'm assuming generally people agree with that statement that Mr. Odom had in his testimony. Thank you. What role do you think excessive speculation in the futures market is having on elevated oil prices? And I know that, you know, some of your colleagues, I think Mr. Tillerson, in the past, you talked about speculation and the weakening dollar having more of an effect than supply and demand. So could you comment about speculation and the excessive speculation in the market and what effect you think it's having on today's prices?
Well, it is very difficult to precisely say what impact it has, and it's also very difficult to separate in the marketplace speculation and risk management, because the two are actually quite intertwined in terms of how people manage the risk of the price of the fuel, whether they're a consumer or a producer. I would give you just one benchmark. Immediately after the Libyan outbreak, the fighting in Libya, within the next day, the price of oil went up $12. Now, nothing had changed in the global supply the next day. So what was the market reacting to? It was reacting to some level of insecurity about what the future supply was going to be. So that is people pricing in to the global market what they believe their cost is going to be sometime in the future, building in their concerns and their worries about other possible supply disruptions and the ability of the market to respond to that. As time goes by and people see how the market responds, then it adjusts back.
What do you think
it goes up and down.
What do you think the price would be today if it was based on fundamentals of just supply and demand?
Well, again, if you were to use a pure economic approach, the economists would say would be set at the price to develop the next marginal barrel.
What do you think that would? What do you think that would be today?
Well, it's pretty hard to judge, but it would be, you know, when we look at it, it's going to be somewhere in the $60 to $70 range. If you said, if I had access, that's the assumption, if I had access to the next marginal barrel, what would it cost, everything in, to put the next barrel of supply in? Now, as soon as I develop that one and it depletes, then the next barrel marginal cost goes up. Okay, now over the years, the industry has historically done a very, I think, successful job of mitigating that through technology advancements, efficiencies, things we learn how to do better to keep the cost of the marginal barrel down. But in a purely economic, you know, if all things were according to economics and people didn't risk manage and they didn't do everything else they do, it would be set at the marginal cost of the next increment of supply.
$60 to $70 a barrel sounds pretty good today, I can tell you that.
And then when we produce that barrel, it'll be what's the next barrel cost?
Oil dropped 5.5% yesterday. Last week it was 8.6. I don't think that has to do with the dollar, Mr. Odom, or weather. I think that has to do with a lot happening in the volatility of the market. And I'm curious as to what you think that volatility, what we should be doing about that volatility. Mr. Odom, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I can. Some of the factors that I mentioned are clearly factors. Now, neither one may be dominant in the current day or the current week that we're talking about, but all of those are very real factors on the price. I think on the topic of trading, though, it's, you know, I'm anything but a trading expert, but I do know it's been studied many, many times by the CFTC and others to try to understand some of the questions you're asking. What is the increase in price that could be associated with that? I do know that it serves a very important function, you know, whether it's an airline trying to have predictability around its fuel costs for the future or so forth. It does serve a very important function.
Well, I would just say this, that with 70% of that futures market now being made up of speculators that are not the end use of that oil product is a problem. To go from having the market made up of 30% today of people who legitimately have to hedge, dominated by 70% of people who are just getting obviously in on this oil game, is a problem. Do you agree, or do you think that that's okay to have the market drive up your price, then you come here to talk about these subsidies as an end result? Mr. Tillerson, I see you smiling. Do you have any comment about that?
Well, we're not traders ourselves, so we're not in that part of the market. So we're observers, and that's why I say we're price takers. We're physical buyers and sellers of barrels. The market decides, again, as I said, based on their view of, and it's really a view of the future, because it is a depleting resource, what's going to be the availability of the oil sometime in the future. And the market tries to decide that based on a whole range of things it worries about. And then it translates that back to a price today, and that's the price we take. And it'll just be wherever it will be. And it's been at $9 a barrel. It's been at $8 a barrel during my career, and it's been at $147 a barrel. And that's the nature of a commodity. And it's a nature, in this case, of a very volatile commodity.
I disagree. I don't think that's the nature of how the commodity markets were established. The commodity markets were established to basically prevent or to basically lessen the risk that individual users have to take. And now with 70% of the market being driven by speculators that are not the intakers of any product, I think you're seeing this price driven up way in excess of what the fundamentals of $60 to $70 a barrel that you say would be supply and demand. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.